Okay, so we're going to talk about ligaments today and their role in supporting the spine and what happens during a car crash. So ligaments are much like this material here. This we can all recognize as something that is used to hold pop cans together, but it's much like this material. It'll resist force in one direction. I can push on it, it doesn't resist any force. It doesn't resist any torsion. It's just a pulling force. It only resists force in one direction. And so for a joint such as the spinal joints to be structurally sound, ligaments are its primary support structure. You have to have ligaments going in many different directions. For instance, there will be ligaments between the transverse process and the spinous process. So the transverse process of one bone and the spinous process of another, that will resist a rotation in that joint, but only in one direction, so you have to have one on the other side also. There's also a ligament between the two spinous processes that will resist an extension or a flexion, but it won't resist extension. Therefore, on the front there will have to be another ligament, which there is, and it resists that extension. So you have ligaments going all around these joints in different directions, resisting that movement, excess movement. It does allow for sub-movement, and it must, because if it didn't, we couldn't bend over or twist or turn. But it does allow for some movement. Now, what happens when there's pressure or stress applied to that ligament that's going to exceed its ability to resist? Then there's nerve endings in the attachments of that ligament to the bone that fire and tell the brain that it's going to break. And the brain will send messages back to the muscles around that joint and cause those muscles to tense up, to back up the ligaments, to protect the ligament. Well, in a car crash, the force applied to those ligaments and those joints happens in 1/300th of a second. It's just too fast, and so the body can't respond fast enough, and you wind up getting structural changes to those ligaments. They don't necessarily tear completely, but there are micro tears that occur. So rather than, for instance, the posterior and longitudinal ligament, this ligament here, rather than it resisting, allowing this much movement, after there are structural changes, it allows for this much movement. And once that damage occurs, then the muscles kick in and they tighten up, and that can pull those joints out of alignment and lead to premature degeneration down the road if it's not taken care of. Now, ligaments, once a ligament's damaged like this, it's not going to go back to normal. We can't get it back to normal. However, while there is healing occurring in these areas, we need to keep these joints aligned properly so that the scarring that occurs will occur in a linear fashion, a functional fashion, and then once that area is pain-free and functioning good, we need to strengthen the muscles around that area to support those lax ligaments. Now, they're not dangerously lax, but they're enough that it allows for aberrant motion, so we need to support that and keep that functioning properly to prevent premature degeneration and debilitation down the road.